Literally like this. Like,
Oh my God, my
good
nose.
morning,
Good
good
morning.
afternoon, good evening, depending on when and where you're watching this Facebook Live. This is the voice and the face of Dr. Tolu Olabinto, CEO and co-founder of Living Spring Family Medical Center here in the Mansfield, Texas area, where we help our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. If you're
Absolutely.
watching live, hashtag live. If you're watching on replay, please hashtag replay. And today we will be talking about the very unique topic, surviving the night shift work life, what you need to know. I'm happy to have as our guest this morning Dr. Chinyelu Oraedu, who's also known as Dr. Yel'Ora. Did I say that right, Dr. Yel'Ora?
Dr. Yel'Ora, yes, you got it right.
I like the combo, the little modification that you made there. Very very funky. Dr. Yel'Ora. I like it.
Yeah, Dr. Yel'Ora is actually my name. If
Oh
you look at
really?
it's Chinyelu. If you look at Chinyelu, it's the last part of Chinyelu, the yellow part of it, and the
And
first
the
part of my
yeah.
last name. So and it's kind of dusk to dawn. It's
Okay.
kind of trying to keep the flow with
I like
my.
that.
So that's that's the idea behind the brand. Trying to maintain continuity.
I
From
love it. I love
dusk to
it.
dawn. Yel'Ora,
Dust it
yeah,
down. Dust it
yeah.
down. Well, thank you for coming. I know that you're very busy and you took out the time to come and share with our viewers today. So I really appreciate you for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So real quick, I'm going to briefly introduce Dr. Yel'Ora. She is a board certified internal medicine physician, and she works the night shift predominantly. So this is very applicable to her. And so she recently embarked on a total lifestyle makeover, deciding to hold herself accountable for her weight gain and not blame her work schedule. And that has been a game changer for her. I love it. She's working on creating a platform that brings more visibility to the health, social, and personal challenges associated with the night shift. She's also the best-selling author of the Warrior Woman Project. It's an anthology she co-authored with other immigrant women. I saw the book, beautiful.
Thank you.
In her spare time, she loves to write short plays and poems, travel, and spend quality time with her family and friends. I'm very, very excited to have you on today. Thank you for coming once again, Doc. We really appreciate you on here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tolulope. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, my Doc, real quick though, why do you do what you do? And we know you're a physician, but why did you choose to do this? I mean, the intro, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I want you to kind of say it yourself. Why did you choose to do what you do?
So pretty much, I grew up with childhood asthma. It was something that bothered me when I was growing up as a kid. And if you know the natural history of asthma with kids, it gets worse at night. So I always had nighttime issues. I grew up in Nigeria. I grew up in initially in Nsukka. My father is a professor in the UNN, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. So I grew up in Nsukka. So we had to go to the emergency a couple of times. So this was
Mhm.
my exposure to the healthcare profession. I had this amazing female physician who took care of me at that time, and so I wanted to be a doctor. That was my natural inclination, being a sickly child,
Mm.
growing up. So through school and all that, I did my schoolwork, and I got into medical school at University of Nigeria. So moving on, I started working as a night physician, not necessarily because I wanted to. I mean,
Mm.
if I tell people that maybe that was the job that was available at that time,
Mm.
because coming here to America, going through the whole process of the U.S. licensing exam,
Right.
I trained in Brooklyn. I trained in Long Island College Hospital. Now, no, it's known as SUNY downstate. And then at the time I started residency, before I started residency, I had twins. So I've always started my life doing all the hard things. So I had twin boys.
Oh
In
my
fair,
goodness.
I'm telling you, girl, it was crazy. But I'm just that kind of person. I remain focused, and I think I'm resilient. I just that is just the way I am. Growing up as a kid, so I I went into residency with 4-month-old twins in 2006 thereabout. So my kids were very little, and having to like work through residency,
Mm,
training, and
wow.
all the commute, because I lived in Long Island, I was training in
Right.
Brooklyn.
Right.
So by the time I finished residency, I had my daughter. That was, oh my God. I mean, it just happened. I don't know how it happened, but I found out actually during my ED rotation. One of the nurses, gave me like a pregnancy. She said, "Dr. Oraedu, go check yourself out. I think you're pregnant." So, my dear, I had another baby coming in March towards the end of my residency, and so at the time I finished, and then doing the whole FCVS, looking for a job,
Right. Right. Right.
you know, I mean, the only job I could find was in Connecticut. I live in New York, and it was a night job, and I wanted to go for fellowship. I wanted to do hematology oncology. So everything kind of rolled over, and I just started working at nights. I said I'll do it for 2 years, and I'll go do fellowship. But
Mm,
seeing how it allowed me to bond with my kids, my
okay.
young kids, and my husband, works in the city, and my family life, minimized our dependence on having nannies or caregivers and all that. So I just continued to do it. But I mean, it really cost a lot, my health, my overall
Mm,
wellness, relationships.
mm,
So, and of course my mother is like, hey, you got to take care of these kids. I took care of you guys growing up. You turned out great. You have to be there for
super.
your children.
Right. Right.
So that was how I started doing night, and I work with residents, and this is working nights as a solo nocturnist out of residency in a big, medium-sized hospital. So like, I mean, it was like it's a level 2 trauma hospital, so we had some level of acuity, and I just got out from residency and started doing it. So I grew into the job,
Mm, mm,
confidence, competence, and over time, as I continued to struggle and I couldn't find resources that could really help me navigate, the rigors of this job, I just said, you know what, I'm gonna create a platform at the right time.
I love
I'm
it.
gonna I'm gonna create a platform. And
I
COVID
love it.
happened, and when COVID happened, I said, this is the time. Yeah.
I love it. I love how it well it not it appears that you have been called to do this because your life story has been pointing you to this. And so I'm happy that you're able to through the challenges you've gone through able to empower others to navigate and thrive even through the night shift work life. So let's start with the questions. What are typical concerns you see for those who work late nights? Like in conversations with those who work, like what are the things that they tend to ask you or say are concerns working nights?
So one of the concerns, I mean, I tell people this all the time. I mean, I've worked nights for almost 14 years, is health problems. You're gonna gain weight. When you start working nights, if you don't monitor and closely manage your nutrition, the time and what you eat, you likely will gain weight. Night shift
Mm,
workers have 3 times risk of obesity, being overweight and obese compared to people who work daytime, right? And
right.
of course, with the weight gain, it triggers other cardiometabolic diseases, including hypertension, diabetes, and of course, you have to deal with whether it's sleep apnea, hyperlipidemia, high cholesterol and all that. And of course, secondly, you have the sleep issues, sleep deprivation, because the body is built. I mean, God is infinite, God is amazing. The body is built for you to sleep at night. That's why you have a
Mm,
sleep wake cycle, light
mm,
day
mm,
kind of connection. So at nighttime, everything winds down, so you sleep. The melatonin gets released, and you sleep. Metabolism slows down. So for people who work nights, unfortunately, your body needs to stay awake. The reverse happens, and there's suppression of the secretion of melatonin due to the light. You're being awake during the day. So this is the mechanism that actually triggers most of the problems. And of
mm,
course, with the whole problem with the circadian rhythm, the sleep deprivation becomes a problem with chronic fatigue and
mm,
increased risk of injury. People are more likely to, some people fall asleep while driving, which is dangerous. I think it's, when you get to that point, I think it's time to stop working nights. if you really find that you cannot stay awake to drive during your journey back home. And of course, night people have risk of social problems. They lose those social interaction due to you're not available to interact, or whether go to parties, or participate in some evening activities, right? And you can also hear people who talk about emotional issues, mental health, irritability, anxiety, depression, and a whole gamut of issues that I just want to create that awareness. That's why I'm doing this too, because I think the more we talk about them, then we can go to the back end to really help people to prevent them. I don't think they can be totally eliminated, right? Um, and that's why I kind of advocate for working nights either on the short term or on a long term basis. I just want to make that clarification because I think that will help people to really,
Okay.
you know, zero in into the length of
What's the
time.
second? Hmm.
Yeah,
And one of the things I wanted to emphasize, these are potential risks. So there's an increased risk for these. So one should be more aware of them. They're not absolute risk, because I don't want it to sound like you work night shifts, you're doomed to this, this, this. There's an increased risk. So you have to be a little more sensitive, a little more cautious, right? And we're going to talk about tips. All right. So this is not like a doom and gloom type session, but
yeah,
those
it's
are
not.
things, it's a higher risk. So you got to pay attention to those cues and know that you're most susceptible. So do things to keep yourself less likely to get to struggle with these. So
Absolutely.
let's go to you mentioned it already. You said short term or long term. Is it better to alternate working nights and days, or um or to one schedule long term? So do all nights for a long time versus doing nights for a few months and then switching to days. What would you suggest?
So there've been a lot of studies. I mean, I reviewed a lot of studies, whether PubMed or NIH, CDC website. Also, a lot of studies that have shown that it's a better schedule for you to have to stick to working nights or days, and alternating shifts are actually more rigorous on the body and causes a lot of circadian malalignment, misalignment more like. So to answer that question, you should stick to either you do night shifts or day shift. Alternating shift is no good. It's not recommended. I mean, most studies have shown that your risk of health conditions is higher with alternating shifts
Mm,
when compared to just doing night shifts. And of course, if I may say this, like you mentioned, these are all studies that computed the risk of night shift workers having this condition. Heightened risk, not necessarily an absolute risk. Okay, because we just need to be cognizant and keep this at the back of our mind when we do our doctor's visits, so that to make sure we screen for certain conditions.
okay.
And if I may add here too, when you talk about night shifts, most studies have recommended consecutive nights.
Mm,
Employers should try to clump them together. People do 3 consecutive nights. Actually, three nights is recommended. And of course, they recommended not more than 12 hours at a time. So 3 hours, not more than 12 hours. And this is another interesting point to it, that people should not, that after you work more than 10 years of night shift, your risk is much higher. And this is talking about conditions like breast cancer, right? Breast cancer risk is much higher compared to people who never work nights. So it's I mean, the studies are really staggering, when I
mm,
look at them. But it's just creating awareness. You know,
okay.
that is
Okay.
what I'm all about.
So if you could advocate, of course, these are medical suggestions. Schedule an appointment with your own primary care doctor to kind of go over these in more detail, or reach out to Dr. Yel'Ora to see what other suggestions she has for you. But I like that it suggests that if you can advocate for yourself at work, maybe stick to one schedule, night versus days. And if you're doing consecutive nights, not more than 12 hours at a time, and not more like 3 days, as opposed to 2 versus 4, right? More like
Yeah,
3. Okay.
yeah.
So let's get to the juicy part, the tips. What are tips? I'll say 4 on how to improve your quality of life, even with a night schedule.
You know, since I'm all about lifestyle and obesity, there's so many other topics that I like. Gamut of so many things. Whether you talk about fashion, you talk about money management, but lifestyle and obesity for night workers is my passion. And I kind of picked this topic because of the not just because of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which
Mm-hmm.
deals with wellness for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
The What I recommend for people who work nights, because the question has always been, can night shift workers be healthy?
Hmm.
It's always been there. If you put it on Google, it pops up. Can they actually be healthy? And I'm going to say yes or no, because when you talk about health is a gamut of mental health. You talk about your physical health, and that is how United Nations describes a healthy person. So when
Right.
people do nights because they have to go to school, they have to take care of their family, that
Mm.
they want higher income to pay their student loans, you can't just deny that they're trying to do that in order to improve their overall well-being. So
Mm.
tips for working nights, I'm going to go back to nutrition. Nutrition, because the risk of obesity is extremely very high. I emphasize that because what matters now, there have been studies that show that when you eat is actually a better indicator in nighttime obesity, in the sense that eat when the sun is up. Try to minimize eating at night. It's going to be hard for some people who work nights in certain industries that has a lot of physicality to work through the night without eating. Because I kind of practice that, whereby I limit, caloric intake. What I mean is carbohydrates, fatty
Mm.
carbohydrate. I limit it at night. After 8 p.m., I limit eating fatty carbohydrate meal, because your body cannot metabolize it. Everything is shutting down, right? So nutrition is number one. Two, exercise, just as recommended for everybody. 150 minutes a week. Try to put it into your normal routine. You get back from work, you get a jump rope. You do. I mean, if you follow me, you see I try to do very actionable, doable exercises that could help night shift workers, even if you don't have a gym. And of course, I have to tell you about smoking. You have to stop smoking if you do. I mean, your risk is higher for so many conditions. So smoking elevates that risk to to a higher level.
Mm.
And sleep. I mean, it's recommended 8 hours of sleep. A lot of night shift workers don't get up to 8 hours. I can tell you
Mm.
that.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I mean, more than 6 hours, you should try to get that, but you may have to keep a sleep diary, which is why I'm very big on having a fitness tracker or an Apple Watch or Fitbit, whatever monitors your activity, so that you
Mm.
can put in, the exercise, you can monitor how much you're sleeping, and the duration of your sleep, and all that. So these are like measures, measures that you should take as a night worker, in addition to regular follow up with your physician. I mean, or your healthcare provider. It's very important that you follow guidelines, whether it's cancer screening, whether it's
Mm.
cholesterol,
Mm.
thyroid, all those recommended checkups. You should be on top of that. Especially, everybody else should, but people who work nights must. I encourage them to do that on a regular basis.
Awesome, awesome. And the truth is, all of the things that you said are not unique to only night shift workers. I hope that's a reprieve for you who's watching, who's like, oh my gosh, it's applicable to those who work daytime as well. But one of the things I also like that you emphasize is the need to go in and get your checkup. So there's an increased risk, but you can catch them with routine checkups, right?
Absolutely.
Physical exam, getting your mammogram, getting your colon cancer screenings done. So increased risk, but you can, with a regular or routine checkup, you can catch those things before they become an issue. But doc, I have someone who's watching now who's like, no eating past, like, but I'm mostly awake at nighttime. Like, how do I push through the schedule? I'm up at night, I'm working 12-hour shifts, and you're telling me I can only eat, I should not, I should only eat, I typically should eat when the sun is up. Like, how do you, what are pointers? Like, you're trying to stay awake, and sometimes food is just that thing that just self-soothes while you're at work. What would you say to that person who's watching, who's like, come on, man, give me a break?
I know. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. Even when I work with my colleagues, I'm like, we got to stop eating at a certain time. I mean, this is like recent studies, NIH, recent
Mm,
studies
mhm,
I reviewed, in the past couple of weeks. Yes, I know that it's hard to stop eating at a certain time when you work nights. Because I mean, the night nurses are the best. I mean, I like my daytime nurses. I do daytime sometimes, daytime shift sometimes, but I like nighttime nurses because they're very good with potluck dinners. Potluck, you come in at 10 o'clock.
I
It's
remember.
spread out. It's spread out with spaghetti and everything. So, but I just tell them, can we just eat this before a certain time? I mean,
Mm,
some people go for 8 o'clock, some people go for 10 o'clock. After 10 p.m., you stop. And if you have to eat through the night, a healthy snack, whether you munch on cucumbers or nuts. I mean, I'm very big on meal plan. You got to plan your meals when you work at night. That is the first thing you got to learn how to do. When you
mm,
work nights, meal plan. Know what you're gonna eat. Pack your own lunch or your own dinner, whatever you call it. Come to work with your own meal. And just as we tell our kids, you remember when kids go to school, young kids, you have snacks and everything for them. You tell them when to eat it. When you have snack time at 10 o'clock in the morning, you eat this. Lunchtime, this is for lunch, and then you're gonna eat this for after school. That is the same mindset when you for everybody, especially when you work at night. You just get yourself into it's all about intentionality. I think that's the
I
word that
agree.
I
Hmm.
have to use. It's
You got to be
intentionality.
intentional.
So when it's 10 o'clock, you can have snacks. And that's what I'm trying to, emphasize a lot. Because one of the problems with nighttime work, and this is also part of the problem why there's a lot of obesity. There's no access to food. Lack of accessibility to healthy food at night
Mm,
contributes to obesity. I mean,
mm,
I've worked at hospital. My hospital at 7 o'clock, the cafeteria is closed, 7 p.m. But you have people who work round the clock in hospitals. So you can see that the system, there's some system based issues that
mm, mm,
contribute to nocturnal, night shift workers' obesity that we'll probably have to address along the
mm.
line, and which is why my forum and my platform is for individuals and also for employers. We need to
Awesome.
we need to have this
Awesome.
conversation. Yeah, absolutely.
And for those of you who are watching, these are tips you can use to advocate for yourself at the workplace. All right, ask, can I have access to this so I'm better able to be present and be healthy and keep working for you. So be an advocate for yourself. I like how you said, lunch or dinner, whatever you call it, because at nighttime it could be.
I mean, I call it lunar. That's what I call it. It's somewhere in the middle, lunch and dinner. So it's a
Right.
lunar. It's a lunar for me. Yeah.
Now, one more question because we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask this question because I have someone who's watching who's like, Doc, you're saying after a 12-hour shift, you want me to come home and exercise? Are you nuts? What would you say to that, Doc? Like, how can we, are there little tips, hacks, maybe while at work where we can kind of get our exercise in so that when we get home, we can just go straight to bed, Doc?
I recommended 10,000 steps a day. That's what most people do. And that is roughly about 4 miles. The problem with
Yeah.
night shift work is that studies have shown that night shift workers are extremely very sedentary. They don't really move around during their
Mm,
shift. So this is a heightened this I mean, it puts them at a heightened risk due to lack of physical activity and movement and all that. So what I tell people that have when they say, oh doc, how can I exercise when you get home? I
mm,
tell them, if you can do it every day. I mean, think about it. Exercise releases endorphins.
yes.
When you exercise, you know, it really, I mean, it's massive release of endorphins that help you to sleep better. And
Happy
that is
home.
why the
Mhm.
happy hormone, right? And
Yes.
that's why I kind of advocate, even if you don't go to the gym, find something you can do in your home environment.
Mm,
I mean, I have this routine I do with, the flexi bands, whereby I can twist it into and jump on them and stretch on them and exercise different muscle groups. I do advocate that, and which is why I think the best remedy to combat night shift obesity is diet, whether it's
mm,
caloric cycling, whether it's time restricted eating,
mm.
because a lot of people just can't exercise after work, just like
Yeah, no.
the lady you just mentioned to me. So if you can exercise, you got to cut down what you eat. That
Mm.
that that is the nature of it. That is how we get the balance. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. So be encouraged. You can work or exercise on their time. Get your 10,000 steps while at work. There you go. So when you get
absolutely.
home, you already done it. Okay. But this has been so enlightening. Thank you so much, Dr. Yel'Ora, for coming and for sharing your wisdom and so many gold nuggets here. Please share. Please share. Sharing is caring. If you know anyone who actually works night shift, forward this video to them. Share it with them. I think they'll be very, very appreciated that you thought of them. So, Doc, people are wondering. You talk about your platform. You talk about different things. Where can people find you to connect with you as a speaker? Maybe come see you when you're working, or
Of
to connect with
course.
you to come have them speak, have you speak there on their platform. Doc, where can people find you?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's a very essential question. Thank you. So, for you to connect with me, you can find me. I have a website. I have a brand new website, and it's www.dr. Dr. Yel'Ora, Dr. Yel'Ora, YELORA.com. So the website is brand new. It answers all the questions, all the services that I provide.
Mm,
You can find me on Instagram too. On Instagram is Dr. Yel'Ora, MD. I also go by the Dusk to Dawn MD, which is
I
which
like
kind of
that.
makes sense. It's dusk to dawn. That's when I work, you know. Um, and I'm on LinkedIn too. Like LinkedIn, Dr. Yel'Ora. You find me on LinkedIn under that name. So I mean, connect with me. I just want to just I mean, the whole idea of my platform, I want to connect with you. I want to know your why. Why are you working at night? Why? Because your why determines how long you should be doing it.
Mm,
For me, because
mm,
for me, I've done it for so long, and knowing what I know now, I'm cutting back on my hours and I'm transitioning
mm.
into another,
Okay.
another job. Yeah. So but I think people need it in order to get ahead in life. People
Mm,
need it to level up, to get
mm,
an education, to care
mm,
for their kids,
mm. For this
autonomy.
season. Mm,
Yeah, there's a reason and there's a season for it. So
correct.
I want to help them in that growth as they navigate night shift.
Your passion for it is palpable. So I'm glad that you came on. We've actually put
Oh
the
my God,
information for where
I'm
people can
sorry.
connect with you. Oh, you're good.
I have a
Um,
cold.
you're good. You're good. Thank you for coming, even though you're not feeling well. And we've put that information here for people to connect with you. So thank you so much for sharing. And for those of you who are watching, I appreciate you for joining. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you
Thank
or
you.
anyone you know is looking for an awesome, a thorough, and a passionate family physician who have conversations to help improve your quality and quantity of life, I am she. Have a good one. Thank you, Doc. You rock.
Thank you. Thank you.